Well, I was a city councillor for 15 years, and I've been elected twice as mayor of the city of Burnaby. I'm in my 20th year of service on city council. It's been a wonderful experience for me. It's a beautiful city and one that has progressed from a suburban municipality to a big part of the urban centre over the past 2 decades. I'm also a director of the Greater Vancouver Regional District, the chair of the Land Use and Transportation Planning Committee, and I'm also a director of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So I have numerous other jobs that are added on to my duties as mayor that help me get a broad perspective on the issues provincially and regionally and also federally in regard to municipalities and the issues that we face.
Hmm. So you've been almost 20 years in City Hall here in Burnaby?
20 years in City Hall.
All right.
I was only 7 when I was elected.
All right, but you're also the director of TransLink?
I was a director of TransLink up until January. I've been on TransLink twice. I was the former chair of BC Transit, all of the transit systems in British Columbia from 1994 to 97. And so I have a considerable degree of experience in transportation issues, particularly transit. Unfortunately, the seats for us on the board of TransLink are not permanent seats, even for the third largest municipality. So we alternate with the City of New Westminster. So this year, Mayor Wayne Wright of the City of New Westminster is representing Burnaby's interests on the TransLink board.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that there was this alternative times that you take, because Vancouver has 3 seats, and I don't think they alternate with anyone.
Exactly. It's one of the great unfairnesses of the TransLink system. You got to remember it was designed by former Vancouver City Councillor George Puel in conjunction with then the Minister Joy MacPhail. And it's one in which Vancouver gained 3 permanent seats, and effectively Surrey maintains 2 permanent seats. Richmond maintains a permanent seat. But the northeast sector, Burnaby, New Westminster, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, Port Moody, Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, we have to fight over who gets to represent our municipalities on the board, and the best way to do it has been by alternating.
Is it because of the population of Burnaby that is less than Surrey and Richmond?
No, we're a bigger population than Richmond. The populations go, Vancouver is about 580,000. They have about a quarter of the regional population. Surrey is closing in on 400,000, and our population is about 220,000. As I say, it's a great injustice that our city does not have a permanent seat on the TransLink board, and I advocated strongly in any change that they made that we have 17 seats on the board so that all of the major municipalities have consistent representation.
Yeah. Who would make that change?
The minister, the premier. Minister Falcon is now considering changes to the board. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to do one that will assist in greater democracy. Instead, I think he will be looking probably towards more participation by the business community on the board, which I think will be a great disadvantage to the transit users and the taxpayers of the region.
We've been in California, and downtown buses, they're 25 cents. We see downtown Seattle, the buses, the train is free. Downtown Calgary, the train is free. And we've been trying to find out why is Vancouver not doing the same thing, perhaps in certain line or in certain area, or the lower mainland could take that direction too, in order to increase ridership, lower pollution and congestion. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that free transit ridership would have been a wonderful move to make in the Lower Mainland if we would have followed a less aggressive capital expansion program. Vancouver has prioritized subway lines like the Richmond line over the idea of making transit less expensive. And most certainly one of the greatest deficits we have now is a lack of buses, where 80% of our ridership is on the buses, yet most of our money is going into rapid transit lines that are extremely expensive. The RAV line and the expenses tied to the RAV line mean $1 billion in debt for lower mainland municipalities, and so our ability to be flexible in fares is extremely limited. In addition, the private sector contract with the RAV line anticipates that we will raise our fares by the cost of inflation each year, because that's how much we're going to owe the private sector operator. So we're tied in to raising our fares in order to deliver for the private sector. It's an unfortunate situation. It's one where if we would have looked at a less expensive way of doing light rail, for instance, to Richmond, then certainly I think the option of having downtown fares free would have been open to us. Right now, we're in the midst of an economic crisis, one that we're going to be in a deficit of probably $250 million within the next few years on an annual basis. That means that we're not going to have any of those options open to us. In fact, we're going to be looking for more taxation from property owners to be able to support it.
If we went in a different way, as you mentioned, light transit instead of the tunnel underground, would that give us, you say, more flexibility to have perhaps the bus fares paid from other type of taxes?
Well, of course. I mean, when we moved over to property taxes supporting the transit system, those could have been really the catalyst for us looking at a fare reduction and ensuring that there was greater ridership on the line. We could have utilized lines like the ones I developed when I was chair of BC Transit, the 99B line, the 98B line. They were mechanisms to use our buses in an extremely effective manner to be able to deliver high ridership that was the equivalent of many of the light rail lines that we see in North America now. So by using our assets wisely and expanding the assets that give us the greatest ridership, we could have reduced the cost of the transit system, and in fact property taxes could have taken up a greater burden of the fares required for transit. Instead, we've gone on this mega project type of development that's increased our capital debt so significantly that it's impossible for us to look at fare reductions.
Is it possible to change that contract with the RAB line, or is it too late now?
No, it's far too late, and the decision was made, and you'll remember that the TransLink board tried to oppose it. We voted it down twice, but the provincial government insisted that that project go forward, and many of the mayors changed their votes and supported the project. Many of the mayors that did so aren't mayors anymore. I mean, when you think about Barbara Sharp, the mayor of North Van City, who changed her vote, she was defeated in the election.
And Larry Campbell.
Kingsbury in Coquitlam changed his vote and supported the RAB line, and he's no longer mayor. McCallum was the leader of TransLink. He's no longer mayor. People like me who were looking for practical, sensible solutions that would deliver for transit riders are still here.
So we're stuck with that contract for the next 30 years or so.
We're stuck with that contract for 35 years with escalating costs and guarantees on ridership. We're in a situation where effectively there is no way to extricate ourselves from it. The provincial government is ideologically committed to private lines. That is, they want the private sector to be the developers of these lines and the operators of these lines. In fact, the contract specifically said that if you came in to look at bidding on the RAB line, you could not have a partnership with SkyTrain. You could not have a public sector partnership. So it's an ideological determination that's being made by the provincial government that they are going to privatize as much of our resources as they can and commit us to long-term contracts that will be paid by our children and our children's children.
Do you think that the money that we get from the federal and the provincial perhaps is all going to be redirected to the private partners? And if we went our own way without the subsidies, provincial and federally, we'd probably be in the same or maybe better position?
Well, you know, the objectives of the Greater Vancouver Regional District were entirely ignored in the programs that were put forward by the provincial and the federal government. The provincial government determined that they wanted to build the Richmond-Vancouver line for the Olympics. In fact, most of the things that they've done over the past 5 years have been based on for the Olympics. And it seems to me to be foolish to spend $2 billion building a line that goes to an area on a floodplain that is designated not to grow in order to simply have a line available for the 2 weeks of the Olympics. On the other hand, the Northeast Sector line, the line going out to Coquitlam, which would support 350,000 people and would help avoid considerable commuter traffic, that line is still not built and still doesn't have funding. So they are skewed priorities. They're choices that are made for political reasons, but they're not made in the best interests of the citizens of the region or in the best interests of the people who want to use the transit system. And in fact, they are completely contrary to our environmental and ecological goals.